Did you always think that you'd be working around cars when you were growing up?
You might as well have said, you want to grow up to be Superman.
Did you always feel like you were a automotive journalist?
Are you asking when the imposter syndrome stops? The head of like Cosworth, North America, called me a good driver last week, and it was the highlight of my entire life.
Matt, thanks for coming, man.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm great. Now that I have coffee, let's go.
Let's go. Let's do it. So I've been on your podcast. Thank you. And you've appeared in a couple of my podcasts as well. I wanted to ask you something that's completely non-auto related. So you're in Manhattan Beach, right? Do you live in Manhattan Beach?
I lived in Venice for 8 years. I just left, but because I still live close by.
Okay.
I was in when we first met in like 2009, maybe, I was in Hermosa Beach.
Oh, okay. That's where you were.
Yeah.
You haven't experienced the e-bikes then?
I have an e-bike.
You do?
I have an e-bike and I love it.
Are you aware of the e-bike gangs in Hermosa these days?
Are they like the same as they're like the little kids.
Like
Grom gang? Oh, they're little kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're like doing wheelies and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Good for them. Good wholesome
shooting
fun.
fireworks at
Oh, are they?
Oh, yeah.
So they're doing exactly the same thing I was doing when I was their age. They just have slightly better toys.
Faster.
When I was 12 and 13, I was shooting fireworks and stuff too. So that to pretend I wasn't and that I'm somehow outraged at this behavior. No, I'm not bothered at all by teenagers on bicycles shooting.
I wanted to get your take on that.
No, I love my e-bike for so many reasons. I have it's called a Vintage Electric. Mm-hmm. That's the brand. Mm-hmm. And it's a really beautiful handmade thing. They're made in America.
Okay.
Full disclosure, I got it because I did an ad for them.
Okay.
They're really expensive, and I would never buy one that's that expensive.
How much do they cost?
Like $6,000.
Oh,
they're
wow.
so expensive.
Okay, so they're like top of the line.
Yeah, they're more than I would have paid than I paid for my Vespa, which I can ride on the highway.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But it's not a brag. It's just like this particular bike. Mm-hmm. I'm happy that they advertise me with it because it is, as far as I know, the fastest e-bike on the market. It'll do like 45 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I actually think that there is safety in speed when it comes to e-bikes. Because I ride down a major thoroughfare to get to my office, and if I could only go like 20, it would be more dangerous. Like I don't ride at 45 all the time, but same as a car. Like, isn't it nice in an evasive maneuver to have more than slam on your brakes as an option?
Yeah,
right. You know, like a sports car will avoid crashes better. So anyway, that's what I tell myself when I'm flying down the street in my e-bike.
Hey, do you really think that cafe Wi-Fi is safe? Well, think again. Public Wi-Fi can be a hacker's playground. With the man-in-the-middle attack, cyber criminals set up fake networks like cafe-free Wi-Fi. You know, intercept everything you do online. They can do that. They can steal passwords, spy on your emails, and intercept the data you send and receive. The fix is something like NordVPN. Encrypt your internet traffic so hackers get nothing. Not your logins, not your banking info. Your emails are safe and not even those Fast and the Furious memes. So right now you can grab an exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 extra months for free. Just head to nordvpn.com/RACER and stay protected. It's risk-free and you get a 30-day money-back guarantee. So stay safe. Keep those hackers away, and sign up now. Back to the show. And you wear your helmet and everything, right?
Yeah. No, I wear a helmet on my e-bike.
Yeah, there's so many kids that are getting busted. Like my son goes to Redondo Union, and like almost every week, there's like a kid getting busted for just like running through a stop sign. And
by busted, you mean ticketed? Like busted or crashed into? What are we talking about here?
Busted meaning they're getting a ticket or some kind of a warning or whatever.
Enforce laws. That's good. That's what we pay those people to do anyway. You should enforce the law a little bit. Yeah, it's probably a bad idea to blast through a stop sign on a fast bicycle. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to get hurt on stuff like that. Like you do have to treat them a little bit like motorcycles. Some of them are legit mini motorcycles.
Well, I mean, your bike is just as fast as a motorcycle.
My bike is faster than some of the slow, but I've also ridden like some of these electric, like halfway, but like there's a company called Maving, Maeving, that builds this electric. It's really somewhere in between. Like it looks almost like a cafe racer.
Okay.
And it has a license plate on it. It does need to be registered, but like it's not quite as fast as like my Vespa and barely faster than my e-bike. And it's like $10,000. Okay. But it's basically considered like a road vehicle, whereas there's like stuff that isn't road vehicles that can clearly go way quicker than that.
Yeah. No, I mean it's just I don't know if it's a South Bay thing, but I mean these.
It's not. I see that stuff in Venice all the time too.
Oh, you see it in Venice too?
Yeah. You see, dude. Now that an e-bike is an affordable thing for a kid.
Yeah.
It's not. This isn't surprising.
I wish I had one when I was a kid.
Yeah, dude. I had a go-kart. My parents bought me a go-kart when I was 9, which I think was like one of the most important things that ever happened to me. I learned so much about driving.
Right.
I learned about, vehicle dynamics and oversteer, and like, I mean, it was amazing what I could learn from a go-kart at that
wish I
age.
had one.
I realized how fortunate and spoiled I was by having that.
Right.
But like it was a thing that like really made a difference in terms of how much I cared about driving later.
Yeah.
I care about being a good driver today almost more than I care about anything else.
Yeah.
Than being good at making videos or running a business. Like, I don't care. But like the head of like Cosworth North America called me a good driver last week, and it was the highlight of my entire life.
Right. It's like,
you know what I mean? Like, if I put up a lap time that's like anywhere close to a pro, even once, I am like, I'm Superman.
Right.
I don't care about anything else.
You can ride that high for a long time.
Yeah, dude. At a car launch a couple months ago, like I put up a time that was like, I think I was about 1.5 seconds behind a heavy hitter pro, like a heavy bike pro.
Right.
And it was like one of the highlights of my life. And I didn't beat him, like, and I'm not going to beat him because he gets paid to do that. Yeah. And he got trophies and watches to prove it.
Right.
But like, oh man, getting close was like,
just enough. Right?
Yeah.
So you grew up in New York, right?
Yes.
Was it the suburbs, or were you like smack in the middle?
No. It was suburban, and I didn't, from a driving perspective, I didn't realize how good I had it. All the roads were like this,
right?
And so every drive was a beautiful sports car. I have to go way out of town to get those kind of drives now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we first moved to the U.S., we lived in Bronxville, that's a really nice area. It's got like woods and
I was like
trees
10 miles north of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
And the amazing driving roads are another further 10 miles past
further
that.
Up.
Northern Westchester County, northern Fairfield County, Connecticut, just are touching, just north of New York City. I mean, the best. It's so great. Yeah.
Do you go back?
My parents still live there.
Oh,
so
okay.
So I do go back, and I love driving around that area in the right time of year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when did your, love for cars, start?
I mean, way back. My dad bought me my first issue of Road and Track when I was like 4 or 5. I still have it. And then it was, okay, I can sit on his lap and steer, around the neighborhood in his car. And then it was, he got a stick car, and I could sit in the passenger seat and do this. And then when I was 9, I got the go-kart. My dad got me a go-kart. My mom and dad, sorry, mom. Both of them got me a go-kart, and then took me places to use it. It wasn't like a crazy racing one. It was a kid's one, but I really got opportunities to drive stuff, and my dad and I played golf because Westchester, so I'm always driving the cart. We'd go to the SUNY Purchase, the big college, and he'd let me drive his car around the parking lot and the perimeter roads when I was like 12, and it always just became about exploring different experiences with driving. And as like a young, I wasn't like so fat, but I wasn't like an athlete, and I wasn't fast, and it allowed me, I was like, oh, I can do this well. I can go fast in this.
Right.
And so that became important.
Yeah. Was your dad a car guy? Or is a car guy?
I mean, he's an enthusiast of generally nice cars.
Okay.
Some of my stuff rubs off on him.
Okay.
He's a James Bond freak, so having an Aston Martin was very important to him, and we have one. Yeah, and I take him on, you know, various adventures with me sometimes if he's into it. But on his own, not so much.
Okay.
Yeah, he has to be prodded into it. My little nephews are like insane, so anything I do, I just send them pictures and they lose their minds.
Hey, thanks for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, whichever platform you're on, and leave some comments. We actually read every one of them, and it's actually great for the algo. All right, back to the show. So you started, so growing up, the Countach, and, you know, which one was your, like, you know, basically the car on the
the Countach is was always the game over when I was a kid. In the late 80s, it was Testarossa versus Countach, right? And I was team Countach.
Okay.
Still team Countach.
Still, yeah.
Although I will readily admit, having driven many Testarossas, that the Testarossa is objectively the better car. If you're going on if you want to actually use a car as a car, you want a Testarossa. If you want to be the winner anywhere you go, then you want a Countach.
Yeah.
So for me, it was Countach, but also like DeLorean. For my first dream car, I had the Countach poster, but when it was like, when I was a kid, it was what is the first thing I'm going to really get when I can get, it was DeLorean, actually. I didn't know that it was a bad car, but you can imagine to a kid, there's no difference really between a DeLorean and a Countach, especially when the DeLorean travels through time and flies.
Yeah. No, that was, for me, it was definitely the Countach too. It was like in Japan, you know, the supercar boom, and it was just like the number one, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, it was unlike anything else, you know, before it. And it's just it's the most extreme car, right? So yeah, that was always the goal.
Yeah. I remember you saying like somewhere like you go to a Cars and Coffee, like no matter where you go, you drive up in a Countach and you're the dude.
Yeah, you're the winner. Yeah, and I've been to a bunch, and I'm fortunate enough now that I have one, so I know that is true, and you can park it next to anything, and you're still a rock star. Even if it's Pagani's or Koenigsegg's or whatever.
Did you always think that you'd be working around cars when you were growing up?
I didn't think, no. When I was growing up, I loved cars as a hobby, but I didn't, and reviewing cars, you know, in a magazine like Road and Track or something, you might as well have said, you want to grow up to be Superman. That wasn't a thing that regular people could just do. Right. You had to be special to do that somehow. So that was never an option for me. Realistic. I love photography. That's what I studied in high school. It's what I studied in college. And so I wanted to be a photographer. I liked landscape and architecture and stuff like that. Stuff that nobody makes money doing. But that's what I pursued, was professional photography. It wasn't until I learned pretty definitively that there was no money to be had in professional photography that it was like, all right, well, what else is there? This was 2005. And so it was cars. I mean, YouTube hadn't been invented yet.
No.
You know, nothing that I do other than write for the magazine had been invented yet, but it was all right. Well, I like cars. So what would be an interesting thing to do with cars? Yeah. So it was just like, all right, get a job doing something. So it was, you know, run cars around for a dealership. And I worked for many years at an exotic car rental company, learned so much about exotic cars from that job. It was so important. Especially this was sort of the early days of that company and kind of the early days of the modern exotic car rental business. And we would drive the cars a lot. You know, now, from what I understand, those cars don't go 10 feet out of the door before they get on a flatbed and get delivered like that. We used to run them all over North Jersey. So I knew what the cars were like to drive. I mean, I as a customer service agent for an exotic car rental place, I had like the seat time that you'd have working for like a major car magazine. Right. You know? Yeah. and that was an enormous leg up in any industry to have that type of knowledge at 25 of the difference in driving dynamics between a dozen different current generation supercars.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
No, you can't buy that kind of experience.
No, and they paid me. Not much.
Exactly.
not much, but they paid me. And then, you know, after a while, though, that the sort of on-call nature of that business became tiring, and I went to go I started a car wash with my friend Larry Casilla, who has now gone on to be one of the world's best car detailers and has a product line called Ammo. And I left that business after a while because YouTube happened, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. And then I went back and taught him how to make YouTube videos, and then he, you know, has a quite a successful YouTube career also, which he then uses to sell his product.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you get started with Next New Network and that channel?
So when I was with my friend Larry at the car wash in 06, YouTube had just launched.
Right.
YouTube launched at the end of 05. 6 months later, I said, hey, we could make YouTube videos of our like Sunday drives and people will think we're cool and come to the car wash. It was to market the car wash. And so I hired a guy and we started making videos that looked almost, because he had been doing skateboarding videos.
Okay.
It was Tom Morningstar. And he made these like car videos of our friends in our car wash that looked like skating videos. They had that attitude.
Yeah.
And all the copyrighted music, which is still grandfathered into YouTube because it's been there before the law.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The videos have like Pearl Jam and Stone Temple Pilots and they can't take it away because it's been there. Of course, it's like 240p.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need like a loop to watch it. Yeah. But one of our, you know, it all sort of circled back together. We were making these videos and Emil Rensing, the founder of Next New Networks, fell in one of the most horrible people you'll ever meet, criminal.
I know him.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you know him. He started Next New Networks and he saw my videos and they were making videos and he said, hey man, you're actually, because by this point I was on camera. I became the host.
Okay.
And he saw me hosting and he said I'd be good. And he offered me, it was $80,000 a year to make 2 videos a week for him.
Right.
So that's when I sold my half of the car wash to Larry and I went to New York City to make videos.
And were you in the same building as where they were doing Fastlane Daily?
Yeah. The same room. We had just like this desk we're sitting at, we had 2 of them. Okay. And there were 6 of us. Right. It was me, JF, Musial, Mike Spinelli, Derek D, Tom Morningstar, my editor, and Gene Sanchez.
Oh, okay.
And we would all sit around the desk and read the car news of the day and talk to each other and write the scripts for the show. And it was really fun. Yeah. It was like, I couldn't believe that I was like getting a salary to talk about cars, you know, with like people my age. Yeah. You know, it was a real company, but there weren't like rules. Like it was like, you know, we'd go out and smoke mad cigarettes on the porch and like, it was awesome. Like High Times was in our building. So we'd be seeing the High Times like softball team. They're called the Bong Hitters. They'd be in their uniforms up and down the elevator. The ground floor of that building was Anthony Bourdain's restaurant, Leal. It was on Park Avenue, 419 Park Avenue.
To that office. I went to that office.
419 Park Avenue. Yeah. It was right after Bourdain had gotten famous and stopped working there. He had left the restaurant like a year before. But you know, so that went on for about a little over a year. Yeah.
And then you left and you came over.
Well, not I left. The economy crashed in 2008. They sold the company cheap to Google.
Yeah.
I lost my job. Everybody outside of the small Fastlane Daily team lost their job. Okay. And then me and Tom were like, you know, we had learned how to make videos really from Next New Networks with JF and in fact, Tom now works with JF at Tangent Vector producing high-end content for Porsche and stuff like that. I mean, they're very good at their job.
They're killing it, yeah.
But me and Tom were just like, we don't, why do we need anybody else to do this if we only have to support ourselves? But we found out that we were getting fired while we were in California filming our show. And our show is based in New York, people. So we were in California for a week filming like 2 or 3 cars. We're in Big Sur on PCH. We had like a BMW 335 and some other kind of like, I don't know, fast pickup truck. I forget what it was. And we got like the email that was like, enjoy your trip because you will not have a job when you get home.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But like, and we decided like on that trip that like we actually didn't need them. But what we did need was California, because in New York, it's one thing if you're on a salary, but if you're self-funding and you're getting snow half the year and rained out and, you know, the overhead of New York is unsustainable if you're a content creator who needs the outdoors. California, no snow days, no, you know, not to mention at the time when we started The Smoking Tire, it wasn't, to look at it from today where a YouTube channel is almost like the dominant medium. The default. It wasn't then.
Was this 2007?
This was at the end of 08, beginning of 09.
Okay. Yeah.
This was, if we do a YouTube channel, we will have an ongoing, regularly updated audition reel for cable TV. That was what it was. It was Speed Channel, G4 Network, you know, it was Esquire Channel. It was all the little cable channels that would buy packages or that were willing to start new shows. And we thought that YouTube was the route to cable. It turns out it wasn't, and that's fine because we were ready when it wasn't. But like,
And did you start monetizing right away your channel?
So if you recall, because you were there, in the beginning, in fact, until about 2013 or 14, I think, you had to apply for monetization and be individually approved. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
There were all kinds of requirements. It was
we got an invitation super early on. Like this was like in 2000, end of 7, early 8.
This was, and before Emil was a terrible person, I should say, before we knew he was a terrible person, right?
Yeah.
And we can come back to him later, but before we knew this, he did genuinely feel bad when the company was sold and we lost our jobs. He liked us. And so he called in a favor. At Google, he had a favor. And his favor was getting my new channel approved for monetization, fast tracked. That was the parting gift. There was no severance. There was no nothing. But like, don't worry. And they also allowed me to, they whitelisted all of the content that I made for them on The Smoking Tire. Because there wasn't a good way for me to tell my fans over there that I'm doing this new thing. So they allowed me to repopulate with some. So it was like a backdoor thing that like hopefully some people would figure out. And like, I don't know if it worked or not, but that was the end of the goodwill gestures.
And then but he later on went and helped create Drive too.
Right. So same thing. The connection to YouTube. When after Netflix got popular, YouTube said, I want some of that premium streaming revenue. YouTube is where people are uploading like cat videos and stuff.
It was like just UGC at the time.
This is 2011. YouTube wants, you know, Netflix goes to streaming. It's a hit. YouTube wants in. So they decide to create a program that was called the Premium Content Initiative. And I don't know if any existing channels were accepted in or if you had to start a new channel.
Well, Motor Trend was one of the channels.
Motor Trend was existing and they were accepted.
And they got
correct.
They
okay.
got
So none of our channels Like the smoking tire wasn't premium enough,
Mhm.
which was actually weird because at the time we were producing extremely premium content.
Mm.
But JF wanted to start from Next New Networks,
Mhm.
wanted to start this new thing called Drive.
Mhm.
Amol, with his connection at YouTube,
Mhm.
I think the same connection that got me the thing,
Right.
was able to get that greenlit
Yeah.
in exchange for a huge cut,
Mhm.
which was fine. And that channel Drive spawned off several other shows. I made a show called Tuned
Mhm.
about modified cars. Chris Harris made a show.
Right.
There was Mike Spinelli had a show. It then turned into also a cable TV show on
Mhm.
NBC Sports. And then it all came crashing down.
But the brand still lives.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, the YouTube channel died, but the branding was sold to whoever it was sold to, and it became The Drive.
Yeah. That was weird.
.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how little I actually like. I mean, I know the people who run it; they're
Mhm.
friends, whatever,
Mhm.
fine. But like, I don't really associate myself with it
Mhm.
at all
Yeah.
anymore, and I
Right.
don't even really put it together. They're like, "Oh yeah, I used to work at that thing."
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, it was pretty, groundbreaking, I think. I mean, it was like
yeah,
really top, very high quality
Yeah.
automotive shows on YouTube.
we've been like 4 years ahead of everything for the last like 20 years. Like enough to be to say, "Oh, we were the first people to do that," but when you're the first, it gets rejected by everybody
Yeah,
at large, and you look like a horrible person. And then 3 years later, everybody else does the same thing, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we were kind of mean to you about that, and you were actually right." Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's something about being the first, because like when you're the first person doing it, there's a real risk,
You want to be
because
second.
you
You want to take the thing that was first, make it like a little prettier and better, and then you just
let
win.
someone else plow the road, right?
Mhm.
And then go
Mhm.
later. So did you always feel like you were a automotive journalist at the time already, or when did you start feeling like, okay,
I mean,
I'm a
yeah.
journalist now?
Yeah, are you asking when the imposter syndrome stops? Like,
It took me a while
Yeah,
to
yeah.
even okay, I was creating these best motoring videos and then put it up on GT channel. And I
Mhm.
didn't consider myself a journalist for a long time.
Right.
I was like a dude creating videos. And then I started getting invited to these ride and
Press
drives and
launches
press
and whatever.
launches.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, okay, I definitely do not belong here.
Right. I mean, that process developed pretty slowly for me. And so I never really, in the very beginning, like my very first couple of launches,
Because there were no
we were-
YouTubers out there.
Well, that was the thing.
Right, yeah.
There really weren't a lot of video teams at all.
No.
So it wasn't just that we were there. It's that we were needy. We needed the car for longer.
Yeah.
We couldn't share a car. We
Right.
had extra people. We had this, we had that. And so I really did feel in those early days when I would go on launches that we were an inconvenience. It wasn't that we weren't doing journalism. It was just like, and what really helped was a couple of PR guys who were young and understood
Mhm.
telling everybody else, no, just give these guys what they need because they'll make something good out of it.
Yeah.
And then eventually the OEMs, started coming around to stuff like that. As to the term journalist, it's a funny thing. I'm sure there is somewhere someone will say you have to have a degree in journalism to do it, or you have to be accredited with some society to do it. It is a little bit of a fluid thing. In general, people who attempt to use the term, I don't want to say in general. I use the term because I do have a certain ethical code that may not meet the absolute highest level of scrutiny. For instance, I attend manufacturer press launches, which I declare, but I still do it. Like Bloomberg won't take a flight from Porsche. They'll pay their own. Okay. I can't do that. The math does not work. I have to do it this way. But I do have I won't take advertising dollars from OEMs. I leave a lot of money on the table doing that.
Right.
I won't do certain things that people do all the time to make money.
Right.
And to me, that is like where I draw the line of a journalist, is sort of like a level of transparency, honesty, not taking money from places that could be conflicts of interest, declaring when you're being given things of value like flights and hotels, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I use that term. I'm sure there are people that say that what I do by taking a flight somewhere negates all of that.
Right.
And to which I say, hey, like, I do my best. And furthermore, like earlier in my career, the fact that I come from a quote, like privileged household, like my father's a pretty successful businessman. And although he never like directly funded my YouTube career, he didn't even understand what it was until 2014. But like, just, you know, when you know that if you fail, you're not living in a box on the street, you can take bigger risks. You can do things that other people can't do. You can create art, you can be creative, but you can also, you don't have to do every single integration or deal or everything for the money. You can say, man, that rubs me the wrong way, and I do not need that dollar today. And I think that is a benefit to the road towards using that word.
Yeah. Are there any, like, you know, I think, you know, like Top Gear, for example, there's sort of like these benchmark, like video automotive shows, right? That you watched, you know, growing up and wanted to sort of aspire to?
Yeah. I mean, well, Top Gear is obviously the biggest one. I mean,
they don't take ads too, which is
they're
also
the BBC. I mean, the only reason Top Gear was successful was because of the BBC. That show never would have done so many seasons. It never would have made it past season 2 if that was on a U.S. network. It never would have happened. Yeah. Which is fine. Like, okay, that's how their system works, and good for them and good for us, because we got to watch too. Yeah. Later anyway. Right. Top Gear was the biggest one for sure. Best Motoring was enormous in the VHS era, in the very early YouTube and the Street Fire era. Shout out to Adam Bruce. Yeah. You know, in the very early sharing internet era, you know, Best Motoring was it. Yeah. And I don't remember what year I discovered like Top Gear torrents. It was probably like 06 maybe. But I do remember specifically what Jeremy Clarkson's Ariel Atom film. I remember being the one thing where it wasn't gimmicky. He didn't do a gimmick. It was him on a racetrack, and somehow that conveyed the insanity of that car perfectly. And I was like, oh, okay. And of course, you know, No Reservations and Parts Unknown. Yeah. When JF and I were working at Next New, one of the activities that we did was actually a very fun exercise. We watched, I think it was 2 episodes of Top Gear, a regular show, you know, studio show with segments, and then a special, and then 1 episode of Parts Unknown, or it might have been No Reservations at that time. And we made a spreadsheet. And we reversed the episodes into a script. So we took a piece of visual media and then made a written piece of media. Right. 0 to 3 seconds, Anthony walks down the beach. 3 to 5 seconds. You know, what is every shot? And by doing that, we learned. Yeah. How do you make an episode of this? Right. Well, it's not hard. They tell you every episode how to make it. Yeah. They tell you exactly. You just have to write down what you saw. Right. And so all of our early work was, and in fact, I mean, forget early work. Some of my best work today is attempted mimicry at those 2 things. Yeah. Yeah.
How were you watching the Best Motoring stuff?
How?
Yeah. Early YouTube or torrents?
I mean, probably both. I mean, they were on Final Gear. So I watched a lot of Top Gear on Final Gear, so I probably would have found him there. But I think we had some VHSs too.
Yeah.
I think Tom Morningstar had VHS of Best Motoring and Hot Version.
Okay.
Yeah. Those were sick.
Yeah, because we came out with 2001. We started the VHSs.
Yeah, no, we had VHSs for sure.
Yeah,
they were awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to like talk about that back in the day because, you know, before YouTube, there was just like no way to watch anything foreign, especially JDM tuning stuff, right? That was like the only way to even like watch anything, or learn about it, right?
I mean, that was such good content. I mean, particularly considering the time. I mean, it was crazy. I've never seen really almost anywhere else where manufacturers would let racing drivers wheel-to-wheel race car against tuner cars.
Yeah. What
manufacturer today would imagine Ferrari going, yeah, sure, you can put my 296 on a track versus like a, you know, Alpha 12 GTR or something. Like, never happened. Yeah, crazy.
No, it was
awesome.
Those were the days. I mean, they were because it made a difference. You know, that's why, you know, I think I had this conversation before, but it's basically like, you know, you show it on the weekends and you go sell on Mondays, right?
For sure.
So it was Best Motoring was a monthly thing. Hot Version was every other month, and it totally made the difference. You know, once the video came out, it was like Evo versus STI. Evos would sell more if they won in it. You know,
that's
awesome.
One
in the episode.
That's where, you know, that's how I really learned to drive stick, was watching that stuff, was heel towing and
the pedal cams.
It was so useful to show the pedal cam.
Yeah,
I mean, that and the Senna video was basically how I learned to drive stick.
Yeah, the Senna videos. I mean,
that's legendary. Legendary. Yeah.
So YouTube. So your channel started to grow. Was it immediate, or did it take a while?
Well, the first like 3 years we were growing but not making any money. So we didn't value our time input properly. So we would have, you know, we'd put days and days into a video and be like, oh yeah, it did like 100,000 views. Oh, how much is that? Oh, it's like $300. Like, oh God, you know? And so we had other gigs. I mean, I would take other gigs and drive. You know, when JF started Drive, all 4 people that worked for the Smoking Tire, we just started making our exact show almost for Drive, and it supplemented the other thing. And so it was a long time. It wasn't until when Drive collapsed, the audience, you know, when a show does well, the audience credits the talent.
Yeah.
And when an audience does badly, the audience blames the talent. And they're wrong in like both cases, right? Or mostly wrong in both cases. When Drive went bad, the audience blamed the talent. We were greedy. That's why. Me and Chris Harris wanted too much money.
Right.
We took pay cuts to keep it going. But if you want to have licensed music, editors, shooters, real production, requires humans. And so, the Drive, before it collapsed, attempted to do a subscription model. Again, 4 years before people were comfortable with it. Now that would be a regular thing.
Right.
And so that was when the greed thing happened. And so my reaction with the Smoking Tire was, fine. If you guys don't think that kind of stuff is worth paying for, I'm throwing it all away. So I started doing one forward camera, one camera facing me, picture in picture, like a Twitch stream, like a video game streamer, but with real cars. And that I did it as a reaction to people not wanting to pay for quality. I said, well, then I'll give you trash. Well, what it revealed by doing 15-minute uncut videos was that actually I was the only person who could do that.
Was this the one take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason it was called One Take is because at Drive, they used to call me One Take Matt, because I'd go to do my in-car, I'd come back in 3.5 minutes and go, done. And they go, you can't be done. I'm done. And they go watch it and they go, You're done. I did the whole thing in one take. And so I realized that like, I'm nobody special, but I have one skill and I can talk for 20 minutes about a car without repeating myself or sounding too stupid while driving like mostly race pace.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to cut a thing. Just leave it. And pretty much nobody else could do that. And so I combined that, the lack of editing, and I resourced from my fans to bring me modified cars. And over like 3 years, I did like 1,500 car reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
So
talent.
that's how I made a lot of money.
Yeah, and you're right. There's no one else that can do that like you do. But
I mean, there probably are now because there was nobody who could run a 4-minute mile for a while. Mm-hmm. But like now there probably are. And there's people who do a better job than me if they're writing material, if they're writing bits and jokes. And, I always wanted to be on Top Gear. And when when Rutledge got that gig, mm-hmm. obviously in the like big, teddy bear role that I probably would have gotten, I was like annoyed I didn't get it until I met Rutledge. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, of course this guy, he's such a more positive version of me, a much more family friendly, mm-hmm. Version of me who will, he's just always got a smile on his face and like loves people and loves everything. Like, mm-hmm. of course he got this job. So I wasn't even mad anymore. But also like, that's a lot of videos. And so you get very burnt out doing that.
There are a lot of sketchy cars in there too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there are. I mean, there aren't a lot of sketchy cars. There's a few sketchy cars. There's a lot of cars where, someone doesn't have a lot of experience. And so they're trying stuff and mm-hmm. it doesn't always work. But what happened when I was driving people's personal cars, after a while, I would only drive these cars for like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So everything was a first impression. Right. And you can get a lot from a first impression. Yeah. But very little of it is retained and or is useful. So it would be very much in the hands, in the feet, in the butt, out the mouth, and gone forever. Right. Whereas with cars that I drive for like a week, I actually learned something that I could tell you a couple years down the road what I learned about that car. Mm-hmm. And it was also like, I kind of got tired of like publicly judging people's personal car. Like, this is Taro. Today we're going to drive Taro's RX-7. He's modified it doing this. Let's see if he did a good job. Like, according to what? My like arbitrary standards, mm-hmm. as opposed to Ford wants you to pay $104,000 for this GT500. Mm-hmm. Is it this big nameless, faceless company wants you to buy this thing? Should you? That became a more useful way to make my time more useful to more people than just judging this dude to his face driving his car.
Who's just spent the last decade building.
Yeah, and a lot of people when I stopped doing that, a lot of people got kind of bummed. They're like, yeah, we came to you because you do this thing and mm-hmm. now you're not doing it anymore. And therefore like you suck or whatever, do the dance, monkey. Yeah. But it just is what it is. And
yeah, I mean, there's always a time to stop too. It did really well.
To be honest, I also ran out of cars. I mean, you drive 3 or 4 modified versions of the same. One of the big things I learned doing that mm-hmm. is it does not matter what you do to a Subaru STI. They all drive exactly the same. Oh, mine has Öhlins and that one had BC Racing, and they're completely different. No, they're not. They drive the same. Well, mine has a catless downpipe, and this has an open wastegate, and I've got a closed deck, this and that. And it's like, yeah, well, it drives like the stock one with the exhaust cut off. They all drive the same. You can't change how a Subaru drives. Stop trying.
That's hilarious.
And that started happening with a bunch of stuff. It just, a lot of the nuance was just, it was so great mm-hmm. that unless you're doing best motoring where you've got them all, which is like why I love working at Road and Track, because we do these big group tests. Mm-hmm. I'll go to a car, I'll go to the press launch, I'll drive it on the launch for a day on the street, I'll drive it on the track, I'll go, this is a nice car. We'll have a Road and Track Performance Car of the Year. Mm-hmm. Here's that same car. Yeah. There's 12 other cars. And I go, God, this thing is terrible. Why? Because the context is it's next to stuff that's great.
Right.
So it's hard. Even, I mean, imagine doing that with a different set of tires or a different shock setup 6 months apart. Come on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's like, what was that car?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And people will come up to me and bless their heart. You know, they'll go, you reviewed my, you know, Jetta in 2014. And I'm like, did I like it? You know, like,
what did I say?
one guy was like, one guy, you know, was like, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like, cool. Like, nice to see you. Like, bye.
Oh, man. Well, that's what you get for reviewing personal cars, right?
It is.
Yeah.
I listen, I will reap everything I have sown, for better or worse.
Yeah.
So like, it is what it is, you know.
Yeah. But has driving all those personal, you know, modified cars, I mean, first of all, it gives you seat time, more experience. So when you're driving a car from the manufacturer, you just have a lot more to you know, that
to draw
experience
from.
to draw from.
And I can get used to a car really quickly.
Mhm.
Like I can get in a brand new car and be pretty comfortable pretty fast.
Mhm.
Yeah. But it does. It's a huge database.
Yeah.
It's hard to access sometimes, but it is a deep database. Yeah.
Yeah. So at RACER, you know, we do obviously motorsports. And
Sure.
we do mostly motorsports.
Says it right there on the cover.
We're expanding a little bit to like these kind of conversations where it's not just all about motorsports. But
I like racing. Racing is fun.
do you think the cars that you're seeing from the manufacturers are getting way too fast for the regular Joe?
Well, they've been that. I mean, so it's just the probably from a performance standpoint, the most dangerous jump in performance is like if someone gets to like an electric, you know, super EV or the EV Hummer, or where you have, you know, something that is very, very heavy and also very, very fast, and with the silence that masks a lot of the speed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, I mean, and also like in terms of roads, you know, the roads that we drive on were really designed in the 50s, 60s, you know, for cars that are not the size and weight of what we're normally driving now.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't love beyond my perfect like sports car is like around 3,000, 3,200 pounds. It's like 400 to 500 horsepower, mid-engine, manual gearbox, great brakes, a compliant chassis with a good high quality shock absorber. I mean, basically I've just described my Porsche 718 Spider. So like, I don't like when a car gets too big and then you need tech to manage the weight, and then you know, and then they add hardware to manage the tech, and then and the cycle, you know, continues. I think the thing about the modern cars that are very, very fast is they're not terrible when they're driven slowly. So no one's making you drive them very, very fast. And I mean, right now outside this building, I'm driving a $700,000 Lamborghini with 1,000 horsepower. It is by far the most civilized Lamborghini sports car I have ever driven. It's smooth. It rides beautifully. I could putter around all day running errands in it, and it would just be a true delight.
Really?
Yeah, really. Yeah. For real. That's the real revelation of this car, not that it's insanely fast, which, oh, by the way, it also is. So it's not so much that the cars are that fast. My concern is the growth of size, weight, and the way it wears and tears on our infrastructure, the kind of damage it causes when it hits another thing, things like that.
Yeah. So our common friend, you know, Ben Schaefer. So he has that company that modifies Teslas and Cybertrucks. Yeah. Right. I mean, what do you think of like modified these EVs? Well,
you're talking about unplugged performance.
Unplugged, yeah. And the Cybertruck one is also, maybe it's a different brand,
is it
right?
Not called it? I don't know. I don't necessarily follow.
Okay.
I mean, the best way to modify a Cybertruck is to drive it into an ocean and turn it into an artificial reef. It'll probably do that on its own during your ownership. It's a very, very poorly built, embarrassing vehicle. If I spent $100,000 and that was the product if I bought a Costco wine fridge that came with panel gaps like that for $300, I'd return that thing immediately. Forget a truck. But that's neither here nor there. When they modify electric cars, typically they're not modifying the powertrains. They're typically modifying the suspension, putting better brakes, possibly better motor cooling, better upgraded cooling packs, things like that. And so I am totally pro that. I think, you know, if you want to make cars stop and turn better, please, let's do it. And by the way, I had an employee at that company once tell me that they have to nut and bolt every single car that comes in because such a high proportion of them are missing hardware. Before you might just want to send them your car just to make sure it's safe to operate on the road, is all I'm saying. You know, I did the lap timing for I set the laps for Road and Track's Performance EV of the Year, and these cars are insanely fast. We were in a track in New York, and the track manager was looking at my times, and I'm not trying to brag, but in the Taycan Turbo GT, my lap time was what this guy does in a liter bike, like on a super bike. So, and this is a daily driver 5-seat EV. I mean, that's crazy. So these things are really, really fast. But you know, if you can make them handle even better, ride better, stop better, you know, please. The new Model 3 Performance is probably the best car quality-wise that Tesla's ever made. It's a really lovely thing to drive. But a brake upgrade would go a long way in that car. The Ioniq 5N has much better brakes for the same money.
I see. We just had like Jeff Swart in here last week.
Yeah,
you know,
lovely man.
Yeah, and like we were talking about like Pikes Peak and EVs, you know, are just like suited for, you know, high altitude and you know, going up. As
soon as they start running Taycan Turbo GT up Pikes Peak, you're probably going to see some kind of production car record. Right. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they've done that yet, right?
No, they haven't. It's weird that they haven't. Right. It seems like the kind of thing they should be doing. EVs are very well suited to hill climbs.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Taycan. I mean,
I bought one.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I bought a used one.
Okay.
I bought a 2022 Taycan Cross Turismo 4.
I heard you get great deals on those.
Bro, 26,000 miles. I have a 4-year unlimited mile warranty, bumper to bumper. The original MSRP was 139 grand. I got it for 64.8 plus tax.
Oh my God.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah. I absolutely scored. I'm so excited about this thing. It's such a great daily.
That's a great deal.
Yeah. And I think the depreciation on Taycans is not a reflection of a poor quality product. I think it's just a reflection of greater market forces, and that allows you to scoop in and get a fabulous deal. I love Taycans. I really do. And what I really like about them is every variant is distinctly different, you know, in ways that not all other Porsches are. For instance, the rear drive base model Taycan drives very much like a Cayman, which is a good thing. Yeah. The steering is unbelievable because it's the only one that doesn't have front motors. So all the front wheels have to do is turn. Right. It's beautiful. The ride, the handling, it's just like a Cayman. And then when you go to the ones with air suspension, like my Cross Turismo has air suspension, it's more like a Panamera. It's tuned for luxury, and it glides, and it's a fantastic daily. And then the new stuff with the electro hydraulic suspension. Have you been in one of these yet? No. It leans into corners and it flares the nose when you brake like a helicopter. Right. The body control is unbelievable. They're so cool. I love Taycans.
I need to get into one of them.
Can you get press cars? Will they get you a press car?
Can we?
You must be able to get a press car. Yeah. Yeah, you should try to get one. Yeah, they're rad. Or rent one on Taro. They're all over Taro. They cost nothing. Before I got the one that we just got, my wife drives it half the time, and I wanted to be sure that she would be happy. Yeah. So I rented a base Taycan on Taro. And it had 48,000 miles on it. And I was like, this is great. I'll get to see how it holds up. Dude, the thing showed up. It was in great shape. The wear was so minimal on it. And it drove beautifully. And I think it was, $80 a day plus tax. I mean, it was like nothing. So for a couple $100, we lived with it and used it. And and then we ended up buying one.
Wow.
But yeah,
Totally worth it.
do recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. What car, so we, like the Taycan hasn't gone up Pikes Peak as far as
It really
we know.
should, but yeah.
What car would you like to see as a race car that hasn't
That
been
isn't
turned
a race car?
That isn't a race car.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I like when they turn like minivans into race cars, like the Ford Super Vans and the Dodgebans and like the Renault Espace. So I think it's Rich Rebuilds, the YouTuber, I think is doing a Hellcat Pacifica.
Yeah.
Is he doing? I forget if he's doing a Pacifica or if it's a Grand Caravan, a previous gen one, but it's a Hellcat and a minivan. I very much look forward to that. I do like minivan racing. What else would I like to see as a race car? I mean, a lot of the cars that should be race cars are, and that's good.
Yeah.
What should be a race? I'd like to see a Ferrari, 812C proper race. Is I don't know if there's an 812XX. I don't know if they've done that, but they should. It would look amazing.
Yeah.
I love seeing 90s Ferraris as race cars. I love the 550 race car. I love the 355 Challenge. Those are some of my favorite all-time race cars.
Yeah.
And wagons, like a Walkinshaw 850, Volvo wagon. Like I'm about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those would be cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy made a Crown Vic into a race car.
Did you? That's a good move for like Lemons or something or
For,
Champ. What did you use it for?
Grid Life, right?
Oh, for Grid Life?
We have Spec P71, but it's better than the Miata to take the Grid Life.
They have Spec Vic. Is that a Grid Life event or is that a national event?
It's out here in the West Coast.
Really? In times. That's all right. Is it a manual?
No,
manual swap? Can you run a manual swap in Spec Vic or does that have to be an auto?
They have Super Interceptor.
Super Interceptor.
Super Spec is like cost effective.
Yeah.
But the real fast people are shifting.
With the column.
Yeah.
3 on the tree. Yeah. Bro, let's go. Super Interceptor. Oh, dude, how long until it's like full aero and dive planes? Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. There's like, I love the idea of racing something that shouldn't be raced, right? But I've done a couple of Lemons races in cars like that. And the truth is, 20 minutes in, you're like, I'm on a racetrack with other, I'd like to have something that turns and, there's a reason they race sports cars in races.
The idea and the concept is fun, but
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But like, I did Lemons a couple times, and I was like, okay, this is like fun and goofy, and there's a couple people who take it seriously. But very quickly, I went to like Champ and AER and like, affordable racing. But like, all right, this doesn't need to be that goofy. Let's race, sports cars.
Have you ever been to racing school?
I have a comp license. I've done like 2 dozen endurance races. I've done the Baja 1000. I've done AER. I've done Champ. I've done WRL. I've done Lemons. I've done an SCCA
I know you did
one.
Lemons, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've done a whole bunch.
Okay.
I raced NC Miatas. I've raced E30s. We raced a Civic Coupe that was great fun. I love racing Honda Civics. They're fun. Yeah. I raced a Fox Body Mustang. I've raced. Yeah, no, I've done a whole bunch of stuff.
I remember you did the Fox Body. Yeah.
No, and I've done like a little bit of time attack. I've done some autocrossing. I've done a variety, some off-road. I've done a lot. I've probably done 10 racing schools.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot. I care very much about driving, Taro.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. Do you still own that the Safari? You don't own that. The Porsche,
no, I sold that in 2020, and I used it to get my Spider, which I have now. Yeah. The Safari was great though. Daily driver for 3 years. Lee Keen Safari. It was number 14, and I did about 7,000 miles on it. Amazing car. Really, really fun.
Yeah.
But I learned the same lesson I've learned twice before with off-road cars, which is that I spend so much of my life driving cars for work that when I'm not working, the very last thing I want to do is go, let me get in my off-road car, drive 2 hours out of the desert, beat the crap out of the car, drive to it. It's just not a thing that I do. And so it was a fun LA daily driver, had a lot of attitude. I took it in the snow a few times, like, but it was like, this is a great thing. I've had some fun, but I want to get a car that actually complements the thing that I do like doing in my free time, which is canyon driving, really.
Yeah. No, Lee Keen's an interesting fellow. I mean, he's he's a professional race car driver, and he builds cars. And I remember he's
an unbelievable driver.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. Yeah, I remember reading once that he bought an RWB for his dad or something like that. Right?
Him and his dad have a very solid Porsche collection, including an RWB and a bunch of other neat stuff. And we've been friends since before YouTube.
Oh, really?
When I had the car wash, one of my clients introduced me to the people that ran his GT race car in Danbury, Connecticut. And I met him when he was, I don't know, 22, tall, lanky racing driver running these GT cars before YouTube. Wow. And then when we started making YouTube videos, and it was, well, we need a racing driver, and it was, we call Lee. And so he did a lot of the video work and still does. And when we were making Tuned for Drive, when Lee said, hey, you got to see this thing I built, the Safari, he invited me, JF, and Tom to his cabin in North Carolina, and he has a private rally stage, literally. And I got to drive this thing on the stage, and I said, just, it was take my money today. And I wired him a deposit that day, and it took about a year to get the car. Amazing car.
Is he still making those cars?
I know he got as high as, I think, number 40, and I don't know if I haven't seen any new ones from him in a little while, so I don't know, but I've seen as high as 40. Yeah. It was a rad thing. Yeah. I really had a good time with it, and there are days I miss it. But the amount of money I made selling it paid for the pink car. So.
There you go. You restored your Ferrari 328, right?
I didn't do anything. Well, I wrote a series of checks to a lunatic who restored the car. Let's be very clear about that.
That's right.
But yes, I did have a bad 328 that over a period of time became a good 328. Yes. Yeah.
And it's in good condition right now. I
sold it last year.
Okay.
I did. I sold it last year. I had too many cars. This happens sometimes.
Well, you own a storage.
I know, but you still have to drive them. Even if you own it, it wasn't about space. It was about, because I drive cars for work and I have to put miles on the work cars, not complaining, reality of life, that very often, again, same with when I'm not driving those cars, my first thought is, let me go out and drive my cars. Yeah. I live very close to my office, so close that there isn't a point in bringing an old car. It won't warm up. It's actually worse for it than not driving it at all. Yeah. So, and I ride my e-bike or whatever. So anyway, if I have too many cars, it becomes work to drive them. And so Ferrari, same thing as the Safari. I did about 7,000 miles in the car over a couple of years. I took it to Pebble Beach. I drove it to Arizona. I drove it all over the place. Yeah. It was great. And I sold it for a good price. I didn't make a profit, but I was pretty square up. And I really do think that if you're into cars, having an 80s Ferrari at some point is sort of a good rite of passage. It's an affordable enough entry point that it's attainable for many folks. They're about the same amount of money to maintain as a contemporary air-cooled 911. I think people think air-cooled 911s are a lot cheaper than they are to maintain, and Ferrari 3 Series cars are more than they are, and they're really about the same. Okay. And they drive like old Ferraris, but they start when you want them to start. And so mine was a great, like, 5-footer. It had some dings and some stuff, but it was great because I could use it as a car and I didn't have to worry about it. And I would just park it places, and it was an awesome thing to have a Ferrari like that, where I didn't, whatever the miles were, like, I don't care. Whatever it gets wet, I don't care. Like, whatever. Yeah. And you really can drive it that way and not have to think about it. Yeah. They're nice. The mid-engine, it's fun. I own this 328. I now have an NSX, and I have the Spider. And so you can go, I can drive the NSX and I can go, I see how Honda took this Ferrari 328 and said this, but like a lot better.
Yeah. They took it apart and they studied it and they based it up.
And then Porsche took the NSX and said this, but like better.
Yeah.
And when at one point I had all three of those cars, and you could go from one to the other.
Can you see the sort of the lineage there?
Well, you can, by driving them back to back, you can see what the engineers liked and didn't like about each car and kept and got rid of, and that's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. What year is your NSX?
05, final year car.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Koki. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's going to service at Evasive next week.
Oh, nice.
I just hit 20,000 miles on it. I bought it with 17,000 miles last year.
Any modifications on it?
It has a set of Bilstein dampers, and it has a 1/2-inch drop H&R spring, and it has a Comptech catback exhaust, and it has a set of HRE 3-piece wheels. Nice. And that's where it will stay. It does not need to be modified past that. Okay. It's a lovely touring car.
Yeah. We were at the Honda Cars and Coffee this past weekend, and there are a lot of beautiful NSXs.
Yeah, is that every other month? What is
it's every quarter.
Okay, it's on my calendar, and I keep getting gigs and not being able to go. But I need to bring the NSX down, and I also, I have a Honda CX500 Turbo. Which do you know what that is?
Yeah.
It's the weirdest. I rode it on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's very weird.
When'd you get that?
I got it like 5 years ago to park in my lobby at the shop because it says Turbo all over it. It's like the most 80s bike ever.
Yeah.
I looked at it for a year. I mean, I parked it in the lobby and I stared at it every day for a year, and I went, I'm tired of not riding this. So I sent it to Iconic Motorbikes in Santa Monica, who, if you have an old weird motorcycle, this is where you go.
Okay.
They cost a fortune, but they do a great job. I bought the bike for like $2,800. I think it cost me another $7,000 to get it to run.
Okay.
Parts do not exist for this thing. Right. It's Honda doesn't support it. There's the aftermarket doesn't support it. It's God help you if you have to fix it.
Yeah.
And so now I ride it like twice a year.
Okay.
And it's weird. It's got a zingy. This is a turbocharged motorcycle.
Yeah.
So it's got nothing, wheelie.
Yeah.
Like a 930 Porsche or something. It's so silly. But it's a Honda. So once I got it sorted, I start the thing about every other month, fires on the first crank. I ride it like twice a year, 100 miles, and it just purrs. It's beautiful to ride. The brakes are so dangerously bad. So bad. The brakes are awful. And I've learned a very valuable lesson from this, which is vintage motorcycling is exactly the same as regular motorcycling, just without brakes. That's the only difference. It's not like new motorcycles are so digital they do the riding for you. Like, no.
It goes from dangerous to more dangerous.
It's just so dangerous. These brakes are horrible. And so, my twice a year ride on the sea. But I want to bring it to this.
Yeah, you should.
Because they probably have one down there that's like mint.
Probably, yeah. So the next one, I think, is probably sometime in the spring, obviously. And they have like different themes so this one was like actually like an off-road one. So they had like I think the Passport or whatever going up on hills and whatnot.
When I think off-road, I think Honda Passport. Yeah, sure.
Right. Exactly. Like going off-road in Torrance. But the next one is
Ridgeline.
Is motorsport theme.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So they said they're going to bring out, their old
race cars. Cool.
Yeah.
And
line them up. So
I like a Honda race car.
Exactly.
Honda race cars are good.
Right. I found a Z31 and a Z32Z. So they're 300ZXs. It's in our neighborhood. I think some old people own the house, but the cars have not moved since like 2006. Oof. The last I saw the back of the license plate. It's like 2006 was the last time they registered this car.
Engine out. Best of luck.
So Z31 or Z32? Which 300Z?
32 is the roundy one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that for sure. That I have no. I love I like a 240 Datsun. I have no personal attachment at all to any Nissan that's really like pre R32 Skyline.
Mm-hmm.
I've driven a couple of really great, well set up 300ZX Z32s.
Okay.
Great ones.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think they're underrated. They drive really, really nice when they're set up.
Yeah.
But man, nothing pre-Skyline R32 for me. Unless we're talking about like a Hakoska, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But like, no, the Datsuns don't do anything for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Don't know why.
Well,
just never my vibe.
So if it's JDM, it's Honda. If you had to choose a JDM.
Let's see. So if we're talking about 80s JDM, yeah, it's gonna be a Hachi, Toyota,
yep.
or it's gonna be a Honda with like a motor, like a big motor swap, a K24.
Yeah.
One of the races I did, the endurance races I did, was in a K24 swapped Fit.
Oh wow!
And this thing was a monster. It was so fast. You know from Grid Life, they run these things at Grid Life. They haul ass. Yeah, like a 300 horsepower Fit, just mobbing. They're the best.
So that aerial Atom that you were talking about, didn't it have a K20? I think it came
aerial
out.
Atom. I mean, the aerials have had. They started with Honda engines, and then they went to Chevy motors, supercharged. Then they went to a turbocharged Chevy motor, and now I think they're back to a Honda motor with the Civic Type R engine.
The Clarkson one.
There was a V8 in there too. I think. Yeah, and then like the European one and the American one got different motors. I'm pretty sure the Clarkson one was a Honda one. I've driven a few different ones. Them things are hairy.
Yeah.
They're nuts. They're very sketchy.
Yeah.
I mean that in a complimentary way, but they're,
not.
Yeah. I like body work. That's maybe a controversial opinion, but I've driven some exoskeleton cars that don't have body work, and I don't feel safe.
No.
If I want to be in that much danger, I'll ride a motorcycle.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you just get a motorcycle?
I understand why someone wouldn't get a motorcycle, but like I felt in more danger in a full aerial Atom than I felt in a motorcycle.
Yeah, no, those things are hairy.
Yeah.
I've driven one before, and I did not feel safe.
They're a good time.
Yeah,
but they're very, very aggressive.
Yes. And these were like the earlier days.
The early ones were
scary.
You could feel the chassis bend. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
You want that.
Yeah. Good times. I think you were saying on one of your recent podcasts, and there's totally changing gears here. I just want to ask you about this. So you're talking about some like AI clone, like, so they could.
Oh,
right.
I was approached by some agency that wanted to make an AI clone of me so that fans could interact with it. And I was like, everything about that is terrible, and I don't just not want to do it. I think you should stop doing this, and I think you should go vote for legislation that prevents this from happening.
So what was their pitch, though?
That was the pitch. The pitch was they would feed my entire YouTube and podcast catalog into their AI model, capture my face, and then there would be a essentially chatbot that you would chat with. And I said, everything about that sounds terrible. And then about 2 weeks later, I saw like 3 different YouTubers that had been like, check out my new AI chatbot, guys. Now you can interact with me. I swear to God.
24/7.
No, not a hint of awareness or irony about any of it.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's all bad right now. Like everything is bad.
Yeah.
Everything is bad. Yeah. So like content, like what's about to happen with content and AI slop, like the internet is going to become the worst really rapidly. Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen? What are your predictions?
Well, it's already happening, right? Yeah. You basically have so many bots and AI spam and all this stuff, and then you have AI generated content. So you basically have AI making content for other AI. Yep. Everything is optimized for engagement, but that leaves no room for like real things or education or nuance or anything. It's just a more extreme incrementation of AI garbage talking to each other. And it just, why, for what? Like, what does any of that get us? It doesn't get us anything. It gets like 3 people so rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not confident. That's why I park cars now. Like straight up.
Yeah.
In a building I own that doesn't need a computer to run. That's why I do that.
You go back to basics.
This won't last.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the landscape of then versus now, and in terms of YouTube, it's very, very different. This is not. It's not like I'm not like appreciative of the platforms that have given me like a career, but like it doesn't take a genius to see like what, you know, the algorithmic nature of all of it.
Yeah.
It's completely out of your hands.
Yeah.
What's inside the video doesn't matter at all. It's just, you know, so.
Are you going to continue creating content?
I mean,
with all this going on?
Yes, because on a certain level, I do enjoy it. I may not create videos forever because they're a lot of work and they don't return the amount of work. And the part of it that I get that is joyful, which is the experience of the car, I don't need to create a video to do that. I have a podcast, I could write, I have an Instagram, I can do anything that would satisfy the requirements for justifying this loan of this car. So the dream is to create whatever content I feel like creating at whatever cadence I feel like creating it for the small but real number of people that want to watch it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I saw that coming, not exactly as it delivered, but I saw the hard limit of what YouTube could bring me and what it might bring me in the future 9 years ago, which is why I started my car storage business, Westside Collector Car Storage, so I wouldn't have to rely on a Zuckerberg or a Elon Musk or some other, you know, terrible human to pay my mortgage and not to go on the lever to my channel and just make me disappear.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the, you know, that's when I realized I should sell GT channel. Yeah.
I mean, look, what I like about podcasting, and we do the Smoking Tire podcast also, podcasting in general is non-algorithmic.
Yeah.
Like if you're using Apple Podcasts or whatever and you subscribe to this channel, you will get all the episodes.
Yes.
So at least you know that if someone wants to get you, they're going to get you. Now, whether they listen or not, once you're there, different story. But, you know, we hear this all the time on YouTube with people who subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do to be notified that, and then it doesn't show up.
They don't get it. Yeah.
And a lot of people, whereas they used to watch videos by going to their subscriptions box or whatever, now people go to youtube.com. They just go to or they pull up the YouTube app on their phone, and it's whatever is fed to their home screen, which is just, you know, it's too out of your own, as a small business owner, which is what I am. Yeah. That's too much out of your hands.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So
you think podcast as a platform is still free from like interference, you know, the algorithm?
Well, it's still being delivered non-algorithmically in terms of most podcast player apps. So that's good. YouTube's a different story. And we do have a YouTube version of our podcast, as obviously will you. So that is based more algorithmically. So it's interesting to compare what the numbers audio versus video look like on any given show. And you can kind of see the effects of that. For instance, if I have an attractive female guest, my YouTube numbers are through the roof compared, you know, whereas
having a dude.
I mean, it just not just the numbers, but the ratio of YouTube to audio will be at, like, it's usually like 85 audio, 15 video.
Okay.
But if it's like an attractive woman, it's flipped.
Oh, okay.
So like, even if they're raw, the total is the same.
Yeah. Okay.
But I like podcasting and I like writing better than I like making videos, because when you're making videos, you have to get it all there. You're not having a true experience. You're pretending to have an experience that the people at home will have. Or you're trying to create an experience that the people at home are having, but you're not having it. And if you're literally trying to review the car also, that's a tough thing to do, especially if you're by yourself, like on a press launch, which I am. I'll go on a press launch by myself and get all the footage.
Right.
But with a podcast, you can have the experience for real. Maybe you make notes or whatever, and then you recount it in your own words in long form. With writing, you do the same thing, but then you get to edit it so every sentence is concise and great. I think those are elevated mediums, not just for me, but for the viewer, because the viewer doesn't get the complete picture if I have to do it there at the press launch either. There's stuff I won't think of until later. There's stuff I can't contextualize until later. So that's why I think the podcasting is a better medium for long form, and writing is a better medium for really getting my point across, you know.
Do you, you don't edit your podcast, do you?
No.
Yeah. So it goes out live,
Yes.
right?
It goes out live to our Patreon people.
Yeah.
And then we drop the ads in, but we don't change the content. No.
Right.
So we hit record, we start, and then we hit done. Yeah, it doesn't. We shout out to them, Switcher Studio. So we do real-time camera switching or anything. It really minimizes the workload for Zach.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's very efficient.
Right. No, I mean, your podcast is, so when did you start your podcast?
2010.
2010. Okay.
It was hilarious. My friend Chris was like, you should do a podcast. And I was like, no, everybody already has a podcast. And that was in 2010. Like 3 people had podcasts.
Yeah.
And, but all of our whole crew, we all lived in a big house together.
Yeah.
While we were making Drive, it was the same period. We were making all that. Me, Tom, Zach, Thad, and Nino all lived in one big house. It was like a frat house. It was great. Everything about it was great. And we would have these big dinners, and we'd cook for like 25 people every weekend. And we had this big long dining table, like a castle. You were there once, weren't you?
No, I've never been to.
You were there?
No.
Okay.
But I remember watching the, old one.
Yeah.
Big table.
So we, we would be having these conversations about cars, and they were just like, you should really be recording this. People would want to listen to this stuff. And, sort of started that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of the, if not the OG automotive podcasts, right? I think it was like you and maybe Adam Carolla.
Carolla CarCast was the first one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I remember like listening to both of them, and like I was, yours was more like, spontaneous.
Yeah,
and,
his was polished. I was like literally smoking weed like on the show in the beginning. Yeah. We've made it slightly more polished since then. Now we drink very expensive bourbon while doing it. We're very, very much adults.
Yeah, no, I mean it's what you've built and what you've done is like, it's truly awesome. I mean, when we had GT Channel, and like I was saying, it's like, I think it's happened to a lot of the automotive YouTube like brands out there, who didn't own their own channel. Yeah. So when they were sold, it was like, it's almost like they sort of got their like, the rug, pulled from underneath them.
That happened to us at Garage 419, which was the Next New Networks one. It then happened to us again at Drive. And so we had been there before, and I'm not sure I'd want to. I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to get into another thing where I was hosting videos for somebody else. Yeah. But you learn a little bit from each of it. And, it's like they say about like, bands that are touring after like 30 years. It's like, well, how did you do it? It's like, well, you didn't break up. You just kept working and not breaking up. Yeah. And so, again, we made YouTube videos for like 2.5 years before making any money. We did the podcast. I think the first 100 episodes, no money, no ads. And so you just have to like kind of just like keep doing it, even though you don't have, and eventually you kind of either get there or you decide like, it's not going to happen. Yeah. But we're fortunate. And now those outlets, I mean, even though they definitely bring in less revenue than their peak, they're fabulous marketing for Westside, and we get a lot of very real customers out of it.
So you have 2 locations now, right?
Yeah, we have 2, both in LA, one in Playa Vista and one in South Bay.
And the business is doing great.
That business is good.
That's good.
Yeah, that business is good. Yeah. Fortunately, we have a lot of happy customers. And what happens is if you make owning a car really easy, and money wasn't the issue before, it was just space and time, and we provide space and time, then people, they get hooked and they start buying more cars. So
what are your plans for the Westside? No.
I mean, that's, eventually, it's like getting a divorce. Your wife knows she's going to leave you, and you have, she has 6 months notice and you have 6 days notice. And so I assume that eventually the rug will be pulled out from under me with YouTube, completely. And the digital economy will basically collapse, and not be, at least for me, not be tenable anymore. So I'm taking steps to hedge that by doing the car storage business. And we have very real customers who use us and love us, and we keep the cars safe and ready to drive. And I mean, we have 2 right now. Ultimately, if I can have 4, in the greater LA area, I'll have a great life for the rest of my life, doing the things I want to do, play with cars, and I would continue to create content at whatever cadence I felt like. But that's going to be the future, and I'm not sad about it. It's okay. One affords the ability to do the other. Yeah.
Do you think you'll continue with Road and Track?
I love Road and Track. I love the business card. It's the magazine I grew up reading. So the idea of, that is still a little bit surreal, even though, I'm very involved in the magazine, and I got my name in print, and I get to be not just a guy who writes for it, but I do a lot of the supercar tests. I mean, if you told me at 10 that by the time I'm 40 or 41, I'm going to be reviewing cars for Road and Track, but not just cars, but Lamborghinis and Paganis. Last month I wrote the Pagani Utopia story. So, wait, did I actually become Superman, or did I just keep going until that opportunity presented itself, and then I managed to not fuck it up once it was there?
There's something about having your name in print.
Oh,
kind of tangible, like a piece of paper that actually lives forever. Right?
Yeah. I mean, isn't that ironic when the truth is the internet might actually live longer than the magazine? It's funny because we were just talking about fact checking, and I was saying how we have a fact checking team at Road and Track, and that's actually one of the things I like. And for the print pieces, why? Because you can't unprint it, right? Because so when I submit something, I'll get an email a couple days later from the fact checkers who say, how did you learn this? Where did you get this? Who did you have a recording of this call? And it's an extra step. But at least I know, okay, I've been called on my bull if it's here. Yeah. Right.
There's a filter.
I have to back this up. Yeah. The irony is so much content is put on the internet without any of these guardrails. Yeah. And it's there for longer than the magazine is in circulation, probably. Yeah. By a lot. Yeah. So it's an unfortunate truth of the media landscape, but its existence, at least in the paper form, is one of the reasons, that, and my dad finally understands my job. You send him a magazine,
Yeah. Now it says right here. This is what I do.
It says editor at large.
Yeah, this is what I do. All right, Matt. Well, before you go, we ask all of our guests one last question. What's your creative drive?
Well, I could have thought about that one before on the car ride down, maybe.
Before I throw it at you.
No, I mean, look, what's my creative drive?
What drives you?
It's strange because as a business owner, a lot of what I do is not a creative decision, and some of the most creative decisions I've made have not resulted in financial success. If you look at the videos I'm most proud of making, they're very often not the most viewed or whatever. The thing I try to do to add creativity to my storage place, that's not what makes money, whatever. you know, the in terms of like generating art, an art product, a creative product, the what drives me is the challenges put on me by the magazine to not just write a review of the Picani Utopia, but write it from this perspective. Try to put it into these contexts. With the magazine, each issue is like themed. So pitching stories that are within that theme forced me to create a story that I wouldn't have made a video about for the Smoking Tire or whatever. So the Smoking Tire is not particularly creative. It's podcasts and car reviews, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be. The writing is the really creative part. And so I put a lot of extra thought into that. So if I could only keep doing one outlet for cars, it would be writing, even though it's the least visible and the least lucrative. But it's the most rewarding to execute.
As a creative outlet for you.
For me.
Yeah.
I like, if I'm given the opportunity and have the footage, I like video editing also. Yeah. I hate watching myself on video. I really don't like it.
Really?
I don't. I have to.
You're
and so I do.
Though?
I mean, I appreciate that, but it's just like it's a self-consciousness thing. I just don't like it. But so I very rarely will ever watch anything that I'm in beyond whatever I have to watch to QC it. Right.
Yeah.
But there's some videos that I've edited where I'm particularly proud of that work, and that will drive me to go back and watch it at some point later. The edit, not because that's where the story happens, right?
Right. And writing is just the most basic form of creativity, though, right? It really like brings it down to
to
basics.
Words on a page, and it's hard to say things in a new way, and it's hard to find you drive a car and you have to come up with a theme for the story that has nothing to do with the car. It's a fun challenge. Yeah. I don't always succeed, but that is the most rewarding challenge. Yeah.
Nice watch.
Thank you. Yeah. It's got an overhead view of Tahiti painted on it by the dial artist.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, it's like going on vacation every time I look in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Matt,
thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming down.
My pleasure.
Where do people find you?
The Smoking Tire, YouTube. The Smoking Tire podcast, available audio and YouTube. The Smoking Tire on Instagram. And if you're in LA and want your car cared for a lot better than it is at home, Westside Collector Car Storage, WCCS.com.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
Matt Farah.
See y'all later.
Thank you. Thanks for watching and listening to The Creative Drive, where we offer listeners a candid look into the minds of automotive creators and their journeys. The Creative Drive is available on all podcast platforms, and we have more awesome guests lined up for you guys, so please subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. If you're interested in partnering with us, or if you have any feedback, please email us at podcast@racer.com or DM us in our Instagram. The Creative Drive is produced by Molly Binks from RACER Studio, directed by TJ Keon, creative director George Tamayo, and edited by Andrew Snyder. We've got New Nick, OG Nick, and Morgan on the socials. I'm your host, Taro Koki. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next time.